Share with you a couple of videos that some people shared about the 250 event that circus that Trump did in front of the White House. So before I get to that, in the reading of Ezekiel 37, this is where his people were dead, and he wakes us up, the valley of the dry bones. He brings us back to life because we are in the land of the dead, because we fell into captivity. So because that captivity is up, when we wake up, Gog and Magog will come back into our lands, and they will do the same thing to us. Now that we're settled and we're at peace, and to make us slaves all over again. This is what's happening right now. So the reason why do we need a reset when there's nothing wrong with this system, right? Everybody's been doing the system for hundreds of years. It's because they can't hold us to the system anymore. Why? Because the 400 years is up. So they know that. So in order to do a new reset, they're dedicating the country again. Like they said they would try to do the same thing again, but it's not going to work the second time around. Because they think that is, but it's not. So they're rededicating the country again to what? To God, to God's real, the God that they serve, the God of fortune. And they're doing the same thing. That's why during the World Cup, they had the big red cross on the floor for the Knights of Malta, that Easter Crusades. Doing the same thing. They just want to come and enslave us again and do the same thing they did when they came here to the Red Nations. That's why the people that are gathering up are everybody there is Latinos and Red Nations, because it was the Romans, the Latins that enslaved us. And that's why they're only gathering and taking into these concentration camps and human trafficking only the Latinos and the Native Americans of these lands. And another guy, I'm also going to share his video. Trump is not Apollo. Trump is not the Madison. Trump is leading the way for Obama. That's why his dedication to his building that cost, I think, 820 million, if I'm not mistaken. That ceremony for that presidential building that they're going to dedicate to Obama, I believe, is going to be tomorrow. Why is that? Because he is the Madison. He is a Rothschild. He is the grandson of Hitler, and he is the one that's going to come into power. Trump is just making the way for him. He is just doing a whole bunch of chaos magic right now. And another thing, Abba is purging his house because judgment starts at his house first. We're supposed to be an example to the world. So if you're breaking covenant, those are the ones that are being taken into captivity. Because if you cannot bear fruit, they're going to take you, because you're not under his protection. So get out of the Christianity and the Catholic Church, because that is worship of these Babylonian religions and Greek gods. So the second judgment that's coming upon this world is going to be flipped onto our enemies. So they get a double portion of the bitter cup. So what was done to us is going to be worse. So there's going to be a digital God. You see, this is going to be in the body now. Not like the paper currency that we have, like the Social Security, birth certificate. It's going to be digital. So you won't be able to buy, sell, or do anything unless you're in the digital system. Metal means clay. So you're going to be connected to the computer. Borg mind to the AIB system, because you get a double portion of the bitter cup. So yes, our people are being gathered right now. They're the ones that are breaking covenant, because daddy's purging his house. Then it does the gathering of the fruit, and then everything hits the fan.
If this video right here don't wake you up, nothing will. Watch this. There's only one time in the whole Bible where the Antichrist of the end time is given a name, and that's in Revelation chapter 9, verse 11. 4 plus 5 being 9, 4 plus 7 being 11, 45 and 47th, your 45th and 47th president, Revelation 9:11, Apollo, king of Babylon the Great. But I want to say this to you. Do you think Apollo, king of Babylon the Great, is only the king of the land? Nope. The word says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle and set thy nest amongst the stars, then I shall cut you down. Fun fact, the United States said when they landed on the moon, the eagle has landed as their Apollo mission creed. But how else is he taking over the land? Watch this. The Bible tells you that Apollo will use pharmakia to deceive the masses in the end times. But check this out. Well, fun fact. Do you know all those doctors that you're trusting nowadays with your life and your kids? Well, the thing is every one of them have taken a Hippocratic oath, making you and them hypocrites, saying you trust in the Father, but you'll trust in them and their snake on a staff. Well, fun fact, the Hippocratic oath itself is made to Apollo, the great physician. Well, what about the sea? Don't you know that in 1775, George Washington was behind the scientist that created the first working submarine to conquer the sea in 1776? And here's the thing. John James Bartlett is the one behind the apotheosis of George Washington, in which he makes his ascension trying to make himself like God. Literally, scholars note that the fresco elevates Washington to the status of a solar deity, the sun god, the same role held by Apollo, fusing his identity as the father of the country and the divine lawgivers of the ancient world. And speaking of fathers, don't you know the one that brings the disease and the cure being Apollo? Well, this one calls himself the father of the vaccine. Once again, pharmakia. He also has a 66-floor penthouse suite that's dedicated to Apollo, the sun god, and I'll prove it to you even more. Well, fun fact, that penthouse suite that he has on the 66th floor goes by this design. This design was modeled after the Palace of Versailles. King Louis of France famously styled himself as the Sun King. And let's not forget also his painting on his 66th floor penthouse suite of Apollo and his 4 horses of the apocalypse coming on the clouds. But now it's time to really blow your mind. Let's talk about Apollo Global Management and their tie-in directly with chemtrails. Hey, check this out. Apollo Global Management controls a massive global aviation portfolio that puts the firm in direct possession of hundreds of long-range commercial and cargo aircraft. And what do they do with them? Well, it's part of the Atlas Air Worldwide, which leave long, massive, long-lasting contrails across the sky. That's weird because they also name it the Perseus Aviation Program. But I want to tell you this. See, if you pay attention, they're spraying barium and aluminum in those clouds as a light bearer, a reflecting source, reflecting the sun. BAAL, barium aluminum, Baal, the prince and power of the air. And it's also tied directly into the solar cults and the rider of the clouds. You see, Apollo is that short horn that brings talks of peace and talks of great things, talks of flatteries and talks of good, and then turns in perdition, destruction, chaos, etc., bringing the cure and the disease, the problem and the solution, order out of chaos. Kind of like when the Bible says when you hear talks of peace, then comes sudden perdition, sudden destruction. Here's your son of perdition, Apollo, son of Zeus.
I don't know, except to say that by the time these lawsuits are decided, we'll have digital God. So ask digital God at that point. These lawsuits won't be decided before on a time frame that is relevant.
But is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think we live, there's that, I don't know if it's actually a real Chinese saying or not, but may you live in interesting times, right? Is apparently not a good thing. But I would prefer to, personally, I would prefer to live in interesting times. And we live in the most interesting of times. I think, for a while there, I was like really getting demotivated and losing sleep over the threat of AI danger. And then I finally sort of became fatalistic about it and said, well, even if I knew annihilation was certain, would I choose to be alive at that time or not? And I said I probably would choose to be alive at that time because it's the most interesting thing, even if there's nothing I could do about it. So then, then basically sort of a fatalistic resignation helped me sleep at night because I was having trouble sleeping at night because of AI danger.
You said something that caught me right away when we were discussing various issues just before we started. You said you were up till 4 in the morning.
Yeah,
so,
actually a little more like 5 in the morning. But
okay.
We got the XAI data center or supercomputer center training from beginning installation to start of training in 19 days, which is the fastest that anyone has ever gotten a supercomputer to train.
And is that in that new building off to the side?
That's in Memphis, actually.
It's in Memphis?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's where you were?
Yeah.
I see.
Memphis, the capital of ancient Egypt.
Right. Yeah, you're bringing what?
Perhaps that's where our new God will come from.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Yeah, I wish that was funny. Yeah, okay, so I want to talk to you about alignment.
I wish that was funny.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, he's sure he can control the demon. Didn't work out.
So just recently, Dan Sullivan attended an event called Palmer Colony Days. I looked it up, and this is what it says. Held the second week in June, the town of Palmer commemorates the area's original farmers and Palmer's colony history. They've been hosting this weekend event for more than 75 years, and it continues to grow with live music, parades, games, and contests, and a fun run. Geez, they might as well put a native child in a cage and display it for everyone to see, because that was part of colonization. They used boarding schools to weaken the families to steal our land. So what history are they celebrating exactly? Does Dan know the history of colonization in Alaska? Is he playing ignorant, or is he taking the full definition of colonization and embracing it? So this is their point of view of their colonizing actions. So it happened during the Great Depression, when our nation struggled to get back on its feet. For many rural Americans, the federal government's New Deal recovery program sought to provide relief by establishing agricultural resettlement communities. The Matanuska Valley became home to one such farming community in 1935. Several decades later, this Alaskan story that began against a national backdrop of despair and hope includes a legacy of agricultural enthusiasm, pride, and community building preservation. That was their colonist mindset. They packaged it up and made it real pretty words for everyone to see. Basically, what they did was use the doctrine of discovery, Christianity, and manifest destiny to steal Alaskan Native land. And they also used boarding schools to sexually and physically assault indigenous children, which went on for about 100 years, which weakened our communities and made it easier for them to steal our land. And this is where INCSA came in 1971 to resolve all the land stolen, which is not a good deal. It is far from it. So Dan celebrating the stealing of land And the erasure of native culture is very offensive and sickening.
Now, what if I told you that one of the biggest occult rituals is getting ready to take place in our nation's capital this summer? Now, for the full breakdown, be sure to check out episode 185. But in this reel, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of idea of what I'm talking about. Now, as I'm sure some people know, maybe some people don't, but this year for Donald Trump's birthday, his 80th birthday, he will be hosting a UFC match at the White House. As you see here, construction underway on UFC Octagon at White House for Freedom 250 Fan Fest. That's what they're calling it. Okay. Now, first of all, I always tell you guys that they put it in the numbers. So if you look here, 7 is used a lot in their numbers. Freedom is 7. 250, 5 plus 2 is 7. Fan Fest is 7. 7, 7, 7. And they think you guys don't see this type of stuff. So you already have 777 in the title. Now let's look at this, okay? UFC Octagon. What is an octagon? So as it says, in the occult, the octagon is a symbol of transition, balance, and infinity, representing the number 8. Now notice here, while not traditionally the primary symbol associated with black magic, the 8-sided shape appears in several magical and esoteric contexts. Okay, octagon represents 8. Donald Trump is turning 80, 80. It's the 8, the infinity. Now, let's take a look into something else. With a UFC fight, there's going to be blood spilled inside of that octagon. Now look, blood spilled in an octagon in occult magic. In occult magic and esoteric traditions, an octagon represents infinity, renewal, and the bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. The union of the square and the circle. Spilling blood within this shape is typically done to harness and bind vital life force. Practices involving this imagery often focus on a few key magical principles. Binding and pacts. Blood acts as a powerful metaphysical tag lock or tether. Okay, spilling inside an octagonal boundary is believed to create permanent sealed contract or binding oath between the practitioner and an invoked spirit. That's very interesting. Energy and manifestation. Blood is considered a physical manifestation of an individual's life force by offering or spilling it within a sacred geometric space. Practitioners attempt to anchor their magical intent into the physical world. So what are they trying to bring into this physical world? Crossing the veil, because the octagon bridges earthly bounds and higher spiritual planes. Shedding blood within it is seen as a way to open portals. Consecrate an altar. There's a ballroom being built there, isn't there? Or a ballroom? Or empower sigils placed at the center of the shape. So I would not be surprised if there's going to be a sigil placed underneath that octagon before the stage is ever even erected. Now, it doesn't stop there. I'm sure you might have noticed there's also these huge arches that are being constructed over the octagon, and they don't usually have that like in the stadiums or the places they do that. So I'm going to show you what do these arches stand for. What is an arch represented in the occult? In occultism, an arch symbolizes a gateway, transformation, or a threshold between the physical and spiritual realms. There it is again, people, the bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. Passing through an arch represents rebirth, leaving the profane world to enter the sacred and in moving forward on the path to higher knowledge or enlightenment. So, you tell me what you guys think. What do you think they are trying to manifest with this actual ritual that is getting ready to take place in our nation's capital? Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
Isn't what you think it is. Watch this.
Jeffrey Epstein said in a leaked email he represents the Rothschilds. Rothschilds means Red Shield, and they represented the Red Cross since its inception. They've been funding it. Why have they been funding the Cross to help survivors of war whenever they fund both sides of every single war in history? It's a human trafficking operation. That's what it is. The Red Cross reported over 284,000 missing people, which marks a 7% increase in the last 5 years. And in the Iraq War, anywhere from 250,000 to 1 million people went missing. You can blame that on war, but I don't think that's war. I don't think that many people go missing just because you can't find their remains. I don't think that happens that much. In northern Nigeria, children make up like 40% of the population, but they're like 75% of the missing cases that are reported. Why do you see this discrepancy in everywhere that America and the Red Cross are fiddling around? Why do you keep seeing that? You keep seeing it because it's a human trafficking ploy ran by the Rothschilds. The worst part of all of this is you have good American people who are sending their money to this organization thinking that it's going to help children or survivors of war. In reality, they're probably just using this money to fund all the bullshit that they do. Because think about it. How do these people control the world the way that they do? They need money. So they have to be running some sort of operation where they're constantly racking in money. They literally had like, what, $3 trillion go missing on the day of 2001 on September 11th when those attacks happened. Why do you think all of this stuff happens? They're constantly like doing these little loopholes to fund their whatever they're doing or whatever island they're on. I don't even think this whole Epstein shit is about Epstein. I think it's much deeper than that. And what I mean by that, I will explain this because I think it's important. What I mean by that is I think they're using this Epstein and all these celebrities who have been there, they've definitely been there, right? But they're using this entire situation to focus the public's attention, because if you're focusing on this one thing, they're taking the attention away from all the fucking other islands that there are, because I guarantee you there's a shitload.
You saw it, right? You have to see it. Tomorrow, the Obama Presidential Center opens. Several videos and photos are already circulating of a painting made at the Obama Presidential Center of Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. But the peculiar thing is that Obama was painted with moose antlers. Here we can see the moment they're showing the painting to Barack and Michelle Obama, which included many collage fragments of pieces of their lives. But it's clearly seen how with the window and the trees behind Obama, they gave him some moose-like antlers. So you know they have a contract with Netflix, and that this Netflix production, Leave the World Behind, was made by Michelle and Barack Obama's production company, Higher Ground Productions, and they literally have the deer with the antlers there. Look at the resemblance. So the movie is about a global collapse, like a kind of apocalypse as a result of technology, which literally today we could experience at any moment an apocalypse due to technology because of the use they're giving it. What does draw attention is that they're using these animals, these antlered deer, as a reference. And you know that also lately in the new movie that's coming out, the deer literally turn into aliens. And recently there was also a priest who said that aliens were demons. And I've been saying for some time now that since Babel they sowed confusion. Babel means confusion with language, with idioms, with race. So now what they used to call a demon, they now call an alien, and so on. In different cultures, they change the name of these types of beings that are demonic entities. It's something inevitable that can't be denied. They're putting the reference and the symbology in plain sight. There's a very peculiar reaction when the artist is showing the work to Barack and Michelle Obama. What she replies, you put it all in. She tells him, you put it all in, referring to the fact that he had put images of their whole lives in a collage. But I know it was also a double meaning because of the antlers he put on Obama. The inauguration of the Obama Presidential Center will be tomorrow, June 18, in Chicago. And you know that Chicago's logo is also the bull with the horns. And the grand opening will be on the 19th for the public. You saw it, I saw it, we all saw it.
Of planet Earth, not America. Portugal will win the World Cup.
Now, rapture, as a lot of people like to use, have you ever looked into what the word means? Rapture derives from the medieval Latin raptura, a seizing, a kidnapping, or a rape, and the Latin raptus, a carrying off, both stemming from the verb rapere, meaning to seize, to snatch, or carry off. The concept evolved through several distinct phases: physical abduction in the early 17th century, English rapture originally referred to a forcible carrying off of a person or kidnapping. Ecstasy and joy, it later shifted to meaning being carried away emotionally or experience extreme, overwhelming happiness and spiritual transport. Christian theology. The theological concept of rapture refers to the sudden end times event where believers are caught up into heaven. The English term was derived from theologians to translate the Greek word basically harpazo, used in 1 Thessalonians 4:17. The Greek literally means to snatch away or catch up, but it originally meant to rape, to kidnap, and you're going around saying it. Crazy how these spells work. So let's get back.
He's saying the English language is occultic. I'm gonna just let him cook, play the video.
Your English language is occultic, okay? It comes from Anglo-Saxon,
Yes.
right? English is what it's called. English. Anglo is angelo. Saxon is sexon. It's sect, okay? It means angel sex. It's from the fallen angels that had sex with the women. This is literally where this stems from. And so it's an occultic language. All the old books of witchcraft they have English words in them. Like the English is it's witch tongue is what it's called. Okay, so like when you start digging into stuff, you'll be like, okay, this is really weird. Why is it saying these things in here? These things in here, they're all English related. Bro, why is it called spelling in our language?
They're all casting spells, right?
It is a spell casting language, bro. It's called, do you know where the word, grammar comes from?
No.
Etymology of grammar. Google it, somebody. Etymology of grammar. It literally says witchcraft, incantations, mumbo jumbo, spells. So like when you study what the etymology of words, your whole perspective starts to shift. Like grammar is from grimoire. Grimoire is the old books of witchcraft. That's what grimoire is. That's where we get the word grammar. Okay? Wow. That's why it's called the Grammys. When people get awards at the Grammys, bro, it's witchcraft. They're rewarding you for witchcraft. Like that's why it's called that. Okay? Program. Pro means for. Gram means witchcraft. Programming you. Programmer. It's programmoire. It's pro witchcraft. It's for witchcraft. Like everything that you're watching, I mean, like the television, they're telling you lying visions, tell lie visions, okay? And it's the channel. In witchcraft, it's called channeling. It's the media, okay? The media that you watch is called the medium, is the witch. When you go talk to a medium, the medium's the in-between, you and the bigs and the littles. You're the little, the bigs are the gods, the Thor and all of them, okay? And then the medium is the in-between. That's the person that goes between the gods and you. That's mediumship. That's why it's called the media.
Wow.
So, dude, when you see it like that, it's like, dude, the whole thing is occultic. It's all a bunch of witchcraft, but we're so naive to it. I mean, Hollywood is the wood that wizards and witches craft their wands and stabs out of. They craft it out of Hollywood. It's not like they're telling you what it is. Okay, they're telling you straight up. It's like, but we naively see these things and then brush it off and don't think that, oh, that's whatever. We don't think that's weird.
Now let's talk about UFC Freedom 250. It's a major event taking place on the White House South Lawn. At first glance, a cage fight at the White House may seem like an odd addition to America's 250th anniversary celebrations. But in reality, it is a profound public ceremony that provides the legal mechanism for the full implementation of the new American order, the restoration of national sovereignty under the law of the land and God's jurisdiction. And before I continue, this piece was a public domain on another source that was sent to me, that's circulating out there. And I'm going to go through this and just as some interesting talking points to get us to look at things from different perspectives, and then, of course, have our esteemed panel weigh in on this. Let me continue. To lawfully complete the shift under the law of land, the sovereigns of that land, the American people, must give their explicit consent. That is the purpose of UFC Freedom 250. Far more than a sporting event, it serves as the public ceremony required under Admiralty law rules, the people's visible endorsement of the transition into America's new order. The one-year process of restoring American sovereignty. The following shows the steps that have already been taken in the dismantling of Admiralty law. America recapturing its flag, June 14th, 2025. Flag Day celebrates the adoption of the American flag on June 14, 1777. It's the true symbol of land, jurisdiction, and national sovereignty. It was on this day in 2025 that America initiated the legal process of removing itself from British Admiralty jurisdiction in order to restore its sovereignty and the law of the land. America asked to return to God, April 18, 2026. President Trump reads 2 Chronicles 7:11, 7:12 to the nation as an appeal to return to God in recognition of the original covenant of 1776, the Declaration of Independence, that places the nation under God's jurisdiction. Pardon me, folks. Royal visit as a witness, as you recall, recently, April 27th through April 30th this year, as the living trustee of the Admiralty-based system. The King and Queen serve as legally recognized eyewitnesses. Their presence functions as formal acknowledgement of America completing the required legal steps for sovereign independence. Meanwhile, Federal Reserve Chairman steps down May 15th, 2026. The Federal Reserve has played a central role in upholding the British Admiralty maritime law-based commercial system that powers the debt-based economy. By stepping down, it signals the shift back to American jurisdiction. The National Prayer of Dedication, May 17, 2026. This comes one full moon, a complete cycle, after the appeal to the nation to turn back to God. The National Jubilee of Prayer is the public act of redirecting America back to God, 2 Chronicles 7:14. It marks the withdrawal of consent from the 1871 commercial system that quietly gave jurisdiction back to the British maritime system and the restoration of the 1706 covenant. New Fed chairman sworn in again May 25th, Kevin Walsh, sworn in under the law of the land, which was clearly signaled by the absence of the gold-fringed flag indicating Admiralty jurisdiction, and Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas administering that oath. Using the old system to end the old system. The transition touches every area of life, spiritual, legal, and economic. At its core is the replacement of the foreign-controlled Admiralty law-based legal and financial system that has long dominated this nation. The legal process that began on Flag Day, June 14, 2025, is now nearing completion. By dismantling this structure, America removes the foundation that protected corruption, debt slavery, and treasonous actors loyal to that system. Resistance from those who benefited from the arrangement is inevitable. The transition will involve a turbulent battle against a deeply entrenched system. The storm that will precede the people's new order. Though intense, this period will be swift and necessary to remove the remaining barriers to national sovereignty. While the national prayer of dedication was an essential step in establishing who the nation would place itself under, it was not the final legal trigger for America's new order. Under British Admiralty law, a shift of this magnitude still requires a visible public ritual that demonstrates the people's consent to participation and celebration. One of the oldest tools of the Admiralty system is now being used to secure that approval. Ordo ab Chao, UFC Freedom 250 provides exactly that public spectacle, a high visibility event on the White House lawn that fulfills the ritual requirement and completes the transition to the new American order. Ordo ab Chao is the hidden motto of high-level Freemasonry. For those placed in positions of power under their god, Satan, whom they believe to be the true savior and illuminator, it is the blueprint for controlled transformation. Create chaos first, then offer a new order as the solution. This, of course, is Hegelian dialectic, classic problem-reaction solution. Their system is designed to engineer or exploit disruption through wars, financial crashes, moral collapses, social division, and fear. Once the people are terrified, confused, and desperate, the controllers step forward with their pre-planned, quote, solution. Their new systems of governance, their rules, their gods. However, because humans were created as powerful sovereigns of the physical realm, these systems cannot be lawfully imposed without the acquiescence of the governed. Their operating philosophy is simple. Keep the masses ignorant, entertained, and emotionally invested in the spectacle, and they will unknowingly consent to the changes that follow. To obtain that permission, they stage public spectacles of visible, controlled chaos. When people cheer, participate, and become emotionally invested, their maritime law treats that participation as consent. According to their legal doctrine, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, once that consent is obtained, they can roll out the changes that follow. UFC Freedom 250 is using this very same tool, but this time against the enemy. The spectacle on the White House South Lawn is not directed against the American people. Instead, it is aimed at dismantling the British Admiralty system that has long exercised jurisdiction over America. Through public participation, the event secures visible support for the lawful transition to the new American order under the law of the land. Instead of using their tool to further bind the American people to their system, it is being used to bring that system to an end. The symbolism of UFC Freedom 250 is the dramatic event that creates a major spectacle. It is classic staged Ordo ab Chaos, a highly visible event placed on the White House South Lawn, the center of American power. The two main events, main event lightweight title, Leah Topuria, undefeated foreign champion, versus Justin Gaethje, however you'd like to pronounce the gentleman's name, the American interim champion. Co-main heavyweight interim title, Alex Pereira, Brazilian, versus Cyril Gain, French, two foreign fighters. While the heavyweight division represents the foreign established powers battling for control, the lightweight division represents the common people. An American fighter in the main event on sovereign land symbolizes the American people entering the final stage of the conflict on their own ground. The octagon cage, where the fights take place, sits on the South Lawn, sovereign American land, not corporate territory. This is the same ground where the king and queen stood as legal witness only weeks earlier. A fight inside the cage becomes the perfect public ritual, visible, emotional chaos that the crowd can cheer for. In this symbolic battle, the American crowd's loud support for the fighters goes far beyond enthusiasm. By pouring their energy into the American fighter on sovereign American soil, the people, whether aware or not, are symbolically choosing the new land-based American order over the foreign maritime system. Their cheers act as acquiescence, the people's approval of the transition and acceptance of the storm that accompanies it. The consent makes the shift out of the old system lawful. The remaining events related to America's restored sovereignty, several key events still remain in the process of restoring American sovereignty and completing the transition to the law of the land. the UFC Freedom 250 on Flag Day, June 14, 2026, exactly 1 year after June 14, 2025, when the legal process of removing Admiralty maritime law and restoring the law of the land began publicly. The American people will deliver their loud consent through ordo ab deo and sovereign land, on sovereign land. This allows for the transition that introduces the new system for we the people. G7. The G7 meeting, June 15th to June 17th, 2026. Immediately afterward, President Trump will present the American people's newly accepted new order, including the storm that follows to the G7 leaders. These leaders represent the main powers of that old system. In their legal and ritual rule book, a major international system cannot be dissolved in private. President Trump's presence delivers formal, in-person notice that America is exiting the old Admiralty system and activating the new land-based system. This forces their acknowledgement and prevents any future legal or ritual challenge. Trump's rally to end all rallies, June 24th, 2026. This serves as a victory lap that publicly celebrates the people's consent after formal notice has been given. Military bands will emphasize land-based authority, reinforcing the shift from maritime law to the land power. The performance of Nessun Dorma, None Shall Sleep, the famous dramatic aria from the Sum of All Fears film, was played during the mass execution of traitors and deep state figures. With the people's permission now granted for the necessary storm, the old system's protectors shall sleep no more, as justice proceeds and their protections are finally removed. The Great American State Fair, June 25th, 2026 to July 10th, 2026. This is a massive, joyous celebration, stretching from the Capitol of the Washington Monument to exhibits, pavilions, performances, and family events. The nation will publicly rejoice in the people's consent to end the old system, restore the law of the land, and return the nation to God's jurisdiction, the beginning of America's golden age. Independence Day, 250th anniversary, July 4th, 2026. July 4th, 1776, marked America's public declaration of independence from British rule and its placement under God's jurisdiction on the land. That independence was later quietly reversed through the 1871 Municipal Corporation of D.C., placing the nation back under British Admiralty law. On the 250th anniversary, America completes the lawful process of reversing that quiet reversal. This is not merely a celebration. It marks the symbolic and legal completion of the return to the original 1776 covenant and the full restoration of the law of the land under God's jurisdiction. The storm. The public ceremony is only the beginning. What follows is the storm, and the president has been posting in memes notices about storm. Some may question how it can be right to move forward without the people's full knowledge of these events. Why not simply tell everyone the truth? Americans already know what they need to know. They understand that the system is broken and corruption is rampant. What they don't understand is that their permission must still be obtained through the rituals of the very Admiralty law system most are unaware even exists. Rather than trying to educate the entire nation on that hidden system, which many would dismiss as conspiracy theory or outright impossible, the president is using the enemy's own rules against it for the benefit of we the people he has been elected to serve, and serving he is. The storm begins when the existing system starts losing its legal and economic control. Yet the storm is more than their resistance. It is the process by which the new system displaces the old one. Those who built their wealth, influence, and power within the existing structure will suddenly find that the protections they relied upon are no longer there. The exit ramps are closed. Corruption will be exposed. Long protected bad actors will face accountability, which is what the American people are demanding. And the legal, financial, and institutional foundations of the old system will be dismantled and replaced with the new American order. This is the true meaning of ordo ab chao. The difference is that it's not being used to enslave the people. It's being used to dismantle the very structure that enslaved them. UFC Freedom 250 is therefore more than a mere sporting event. It serves as a symbolic movement and moment when the people give their approval to the transition and to the storm that accompanies it. Though intense, the storm will be swift, as the enemy's moves have already been anticipated in order to minimize its effects. This is not only for the benefit of the American people and economy, but for the world as a whole, all of humanity, as the consequences of such a transition will be felt far beyond America's borders. What follows is the dawning of a new era. America will begin healing under the law of the land, restored to its rightful place under